Nader El-Bizri is a British-Lebanese philosopher, historian of science, and architect living between Britain and Lebanon. Biography. His name is Nader El-Bizri. He was born in 1966 in the city of Sidon in South Lebanon. He completed his schooling at the Jesuit Marist College Notre Dame de Fatima des Frères Maristes in Sidon. He qualified for his Bachelor in Architecture from the Faculty of Engineering and Architecture at the American University of Beirut, and received the March II in Architecture from the Graduate School of Design at Harvard University. He read philosophy at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences at Harvard University, and got a Ph.D. in philosophy from the Graduate Faculty of the New School of Social Research in New York. Intellectual profile. Nader El-Bizri's areas of expertise are in phenomenology, in Arabic sciences and philosophy, and architectural humanities. He focuses mainly on theories of space, place and of perception, with a particular interest in classical optics and perspective Renaissance traditions. His interpretation of history of science and philosophy is guided by contemporary debates in epistemology and ontology. His philosophical analysis is principally oriented by phenomenological methods of investigation and interpretation, and his thinking is influenced by the traditions of Edmund Husserl, Martin Heidegger and Maurice Merleau-Ponty, even though he is primarily Heideggerian in orientation when dealing with metaphysics, ontology, and architectural theory. El-Bizri also composed commentaries on these phenomenologists in addition to writing about notions central to the works of Jacques Derrida and Emmanuel Levinas. His research in history of science and philosophy, which also informs his investigations in architectural history, theory and criticism, is methodologically inspired by the legacies of scholars of history and philosophy of science like Gaston Bachelard, Georges Canguilhem, and Alexandre Koyré. He developed an expertise in history of philosophy and science in Islamic civilization, with a special focus on the traditions of polymaths like the optician and geometer Al-Hasan, the metaphysician and physician Avicenna, and the 10th century encyclopedist thinkers, the Brethren of Purity. El-Bizri studied under Stanley Cavell, Hilary Putnam, Robert Nozick, and A.I. Sabra at Harvard University, and he also was the student of Richard J. Bernstein and Agnes Heller at the Graduate Faculty of the New School for Social Research in New York. He also conducted research with the Islamic philosophy scholar Parviz Moawedh at the State University of New York in Binghamton. In more recent years, he established solid academic collaborations with the influential phenomenologist Anna Teresa Taimiyeka. Nader El-Bizri's corpus is interdisciplinary, and it passes across philosophy, history of scientific and philosophical ideas, and architectural thinking. It is phenomenological in orientation while being rooted in history of science and philosophy. It also seeks to investigate architectural humanities from the standpoint of phenomenology and intellectual history, as well as informing phenomenological inquiry by studies in architecture and in history of philosophy and science. There is also a hint at a fusion of European and Arabic Islamic classical traditions in thought by way of an emphasis on shared Mediterranean legacies in the Greek-Arabic-Latin lineage. A thematic thread ties these various aspects of his research and thought through a focus on theories of space, place, time, being, and on themes in classical optics and mathematics. He is throughout concerned about issues of methodology in philosophy, intellectual history, and architecture, while probing their epistemic and conceptual consequences in analysis, critique, hermeneutics, historiography, and philology. El-Bizri's interpretations of the history of the exact sciences in classical Islamic civilization have been partly inspired by the legacy of the mathematician, historian and philosopher of science. Nader El-Bizri's approach to the history of mathematics in Greco-Arabic legacies within pre-modern Islamic contexts is bent on rendering the ancient texts readable to modern mathematicians. He thus sees the vocation of the historian of mathematics as being also that of the epistemologist, and not strictly that of the humanist as a scholar of historiography per se. He is in this regard a philosopher more than being an Arabist historian. This is for instance evident from his edition and annotated translation with commentaries of the epistles on geometry and arithmetic of the Brethren of Purity. His method is also informed by ontology in considering the propositions and entities of mathematics as being connected across historical epochs, and transcending the differences in language and culture. This renders them translatable across epistemic and mathematical systems and not via a strict literalism due to the pure abstraction. He is not an advocate of presentism per se, but he clearly sees shortcomings in antiquarianism. He rather studies the epistemic history of mathematics and the exact sciences, and he interprets mathematical and scientific notions in context and also in light of later concepts. He is a philosopher in support of modernization in approaching the epistemic history of knowledge and the questions of ontology, more than being only an archival historian who is solely focused on philological documentation and historiography. In recent studies that aim at renewing the impetus of philosophical thinking in Islam, El-Bizri offers critical analyses of the conventions of methodology and historiography that dominate the mainstream academic and epistemic approaches in studying Islamic philosophy from archival standpoints within Oriental and medievalist studies, arguing that these do not usually recognize the fact that philosophy in Islam can still be a living, intellectual tradition, and that its renewal requires a radical reform in ontology, epistemology and cosmology within Islamic thought, which have primacy over the emphasis on theories of value, on politics and law. El-Bizri's interpretations of Avicenna from the standpoint of Heidegger's critique of the history of metaphysics aimed at finding new pathways in ontology that are not simply Avicennian nor Heideggerian, even though his approach in rethinking falsafa in terms of a renewal in Avicennism carries resonances with separate novel modern ways of reading Aristotelianism and Thomism as exemplified by the philosophy of Alasdair MacIntyre. El-Bizri tackles contemporary issues in philosophy through a fundamental critical analytic of the evolution of key concepts in the history of ontology and epistemology. He is a modernist in outlook since he aims to bring newness to the tradition rather than reproduce it, or simply claim to be in a rupture with it. Besides his research in phenomenology and history and philosophy of the exact sciences, Nader El-Bizri contributes to the philosophical debates within contemporary architectural theory and architectural humanities, through his studies on visual perception and on space-place, in addition to his investigation of theories of vision as informed by the phenomenological traditions, and in Greco-Arabic optics, along with his research on the perspective legacies in Renaissance pictorial architectural arts. This has gained him a prominent position in architectural theory and humanities. Besides his contributions to this academic field from the standpoint of his specialized research in phenomenology and history of science and philosophy, however, El-Bizri's interest in probing the merits of Heideggerian terminology and concepts in interpreting the history of metaphysics, and in thinking about dwelling and the essence of modern technology in architectural theory, is not uncritical of the ethical-political ramifications of Heidegger's biography. A new direction is emerging in El-Bizri's thought that is informed by his critical analytic reading of Heidegger's and Lebanese reflections on being, death, time, nihilism, nothingness, and on conceptions of subjectivity, intersubjectivity. Academic and professional profile. Nader El-Bizri is a visiting professor of visual studies at the University of Lincoln and a principal lecturer in architecture, and he teaches at the American University of Beirut as a professor of philosophy and chairperson of the Civilization Studies program, and as the director of the Anas Makdisi program in literature and the humanistic disciplines, and as the coordinator of graduate programs in Islamic studies. He is also an affiliated senior research fellow in philosophy at the Institute of Ismaili Studies, London, also acting as general editor of a book series published by Oxford University Press in association with the Institute of Ismaili Studies, London, titled Epistles of the Brethren of Purity series. He is also the co-manager of a joint institutional project between the Institute of Ismaili Studies in London and the Institut Français du Proche-Orient, formerly based in Damascus and now in Beirut, and acts moreover as member of the editorial board of the Institute of Ismaili Studies Texts and Translation series, and the Encyclopedia Islamica, as well as being a referee to publications by Routledge, Ashgate, Springer, Brill, etc. Nader El-Bizri has been an affiliated research scholar and lecturer at the Department of History and Philosophy of Science at the University of Cambridge from 1999 till 2010, and he has also been a visiting lecturer at the Faculty of Architecture at the University of Cambridge. El-Bizri furthermore holds a chercheur associé position in History of Science and Philosophy at the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique in Paris since 2006, and he was previously a lecturer in architecture at the University of Nottingham and taught at Harvard University. Moreover, he is a core member of the Audit Universe research team on medieval science that is supported by the British Arts and Humanities Research Council and based at the University of Durham and Oxford University. El-Bizri is also an elected member of the steering committee of the Société Internationale d'Histoire des Sciences et des Philosophies Arabes et Islamiques, and he is an active member of several societies, including the American Philosophical Association, the British Society for Phenomenology, the International Hissel and Phenomenological Research Society, and the Architectural Humanities Research Association. In addition, Nader El-Bizri is the co-editor of a book series in phenomenology, and as section editor of the Encyclopedia of Sciences and Religions, as well as being a member of the editorial board of a book series on philosophy and architecture. He is also a member of the editorial board of the distinguished academic journal, Arabic Sciences and Philosophy, which is published by Cambridge University Press. Among his other offices, he is also a board member on fundamentals of scientific research at the Arab Organization for Translation in Beirut, and a member of the board of consulting editors of the Encyclopedia Islamica, as well as being the European representative of the Équipe d'études de recherche sur le patrimoine scientifique arabe, which is part of the Lebanese CNRS. He has also been a contributor to the cultural and classics supplements of the daily Arabic international newspaper Al-Hayat. Nader El-Bizri also acted as consultant, expert advisor and referee to a variety of institutions, including the Solomon Guggenheim in New York, the Science Museum in London, the Aga Khan Trust for Culture and Architectural Awards in Geneva, and the AHRC in Britain. He also made several contributions to BBC radio and television cultural programs. He is also a recipient of several awards, including the internationally peer-refereed prestigious Kuwait Prize 2014 from the Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Sciences. Besides his academic undertakings, Nader El-Bizri has over 12 years of professional architectural design and consulting experience in offices and institutions in Geneva, London, Cambridge, New York, Boston and Beirut. Selected publications: The Phenomenological Quest Between Avicenna and Heidegger, reprinted with an updated preface in 2014 by Sunny Press. Avicenna and Essentialism, Review of Metaphysics 54, 753–778. Kiitzvu Kora, Receiving Plato's Timaeus' Existentia Sophias 11, 473–490. A phenomenological account of the ontological problem of space. Existentia Sophias 12, 345–364. Avicenna's to Anima between Aristotle and Husserl, in The Passions of the Soul in the Metamorphosis of Becoming, ed. Anna Teresa Tymieniecka, 67–89. Religion and Measure, Phenomenological Inquiry 27, 128–155. Variations Auto de la Notion d'Expérience dans la Pensée Arabe in l'Expérience Collection Les Mots du Monde, under the direction of N. Tarzi, translated by M. Santaperi, 39–58. On Topoiesis and the Interpretation of Plato's Kora, Anlecta Husserliana 83, 25–45. On Kaikora, situating Heidegger between the Sophist and the Timaeus, Studia Phenomenologica 4, 73–98. La Perception de la Profondia, Alhazen, Berkeley, A. Merleau-Ponty, Oriens Occidents, Cahiers du Centre d'Histoire des Sciences et des Philosophies Arabes et Médiévales, CNRS, 5, 171–184. La Expérience, co-authored with Jean-Pierre Cielia Coutard, Martin J. G. K. Caranth, and Achille Mombe, with a foreword by Nadia Tarzi. The Varieties of Experience in Arabic Thought, in Keywords. Experience, eds. Nadia Tarzi et al., 43–70. A Philosophical Perspective on Alhazen's Optics, Arabic Sciences and Philosophy 15, 189–218. The Conceptions of Nature in Arabic Thought, in Nature, ed. Nadia Tarzi, 63–92. Microcosm and Macrocosm, a tentative encounter between Greco-Arabic philosophy and phenomenology, in Islamic philosophy and Occidental phenomenology, on the perennial issue of microcosm and macrocosm, ed. Anna Teresa Tymieniecka, 3–23. Being and Necessity, a phenomenological investigation of Avicenna's metaphysics and cosmology, in Islamic philosophy and Occidental phenomenology, on the perennial issue of microcosm and macrocosm, ed. Anna Teresa Tymieniecka, 243–261. Uneasy Meditations Following Levinas, Studia Phenomenologica 6, 293–315. Being Towards Death, on Martyrdom and Islam, Christianissimo nella Storia 27, 249–279. In Defense of the Sovereignty of Philosophy, al-Baghdadi's Critique of Ibn al-Haytham's Geometrization of Place, Arabic Sciences and Philosophy 17, 57–80. Imagination and Architectural Representations, Inframodels to Drawings, Imagination and Representation in Architecture, eds. Marco Frascari, Jonathan Hale, Bradley Starkey, 34–42. Some phenomenological and classical corollaries on time, in timing and temporality in Islamic philosophy and phenomenology of life, ed. Anna Teresa Timenieka, 137–155. Préface, in Ibn Taymiyyah, Les Saints du Montliban, Absence jihad et spiritualité entre la montagne et la cité, 5 fatwas traduits de l'Arabie, introduits et annotés par Yahya Maikot, fatwas d'Ibn Taymiyyah 5, 7 XVIII, God, Essence and Attributes, in the Cambridge Companion to Classical Islamic Theology, ed. Tim Winter, 121–140. Le problème de l'espace, approches optiques, géométriques et phénoménologiques, in ogito e spazio, phenomenologia de l'ogito, a forma e cosa di secoli xii 49 post-Cartesiani, eds. Graziola Federici Vescovini and Orsola Rignani, Micrologos Library 24, 59–70. Hermeneutics and Tradition, Regathering the Epistles of the Brethren of Purity, in Islam v. Classic, ed. Sami Erdem, Classic 44, 339–360. Epistles of the Brethren of Purity, the Ikhwan al-Safa and the Rasa'i, an introduction, editor of the book, and contributor of the prologue 1–32, and of Chapter 7, Epistolary Prolegomena on Arithmetic and Geometry, 180–213. Revision of the English translation of Khwarizmi's Kitab al-Jab Awa al-Muqabala in Roshdi Rasht al-Khwarizmi, The Beginnings of Algebra 81–376. Forward, in Epistles of the Brethren of Purity, the Case of the Animals versus Man before the King of the Jinn. An Arabic critical edition and English translation of Epistle 22, ed. Trans. Len E. Goodman and Richard McGregor, XVII 25. Ibn al-Haytham et les problèmes de l'école oriens occidentaux, cahiers du Centre d'histoire des sciences et des philosophies arabes et médiévales, c. NRS 7, 201–226. Creative Inspirations or Intellectual Impasses, Reflections on Relationships between Architecture and the Humanities, in the Humanities in Architectural Design, A Contemporary and Historical Perspective, eds. Somyen Bandyopadhyay, Jane Lomholt, Nicholas Temple and René Taube, 123–135. The Labyrinth of Philosophy in Islam, Comparative Philosophy 1.2, 3–23. Al-Sinoria wa Naqd Heidegger Litarik al-Metaphysica al-Mahajar 21, 119–140. Corollaries on Space and Time in Arabic Sciences and Philosophy, in Chronotopologies, Hybrid Spatialities and Multiple Temporalities, ed. Leslie Kavanaugh, 63–78. Classical Optics and the Perspective of Traditions Leading to the Renaissance, in Hendricks, John Shannon, Carman, Charles H. eds. Renaissance Theories of Vision, Farnham, Surrey, Ashgate, pp. 11–30. ISBN 1-409-400-247. Phenomenological Directives on Reason and Spirit, Rational Discourses and Spiritual Inspirations, in Reason and Spirit, and the Sacral in the New Enlightenment, ed. Anna Teresa Timenieka, 185–193. The Groundbreaking Physics of Averroes, Studies in History and Philosophy of Science 42, 210–214. Ibn Sina's Ontology and the Question of Being, Ishraq, Islamic Philosophy Yearbook 2, 222–237. being at home among things. Heidegger's Reflections on Dwelling, Environment, Space, Place 3, 47-71. Edited the translation of Roshdi Rashid's Founding Figures and Commentators in Arabic Mathematics. A History of Arabic Sciences and Mathematics, Volume 1, Trans. R. Warren with C. Allen and M. Barony. Spirituality in the Peripatetic Philosophical Traditions of Islam. Comparative Philosophy Volume 3, No. 2, 29-35. The Conceptual Bearings of the Intercultural Role of Architecture in Emmons, Paul Hendricks, John Shannon, Lomholt, Jane eds. The Cultural Role of Architecture, Contemporary and Historical Perspectives. Abingdon, Oxon, Routledge, pp. 199-207. ISBN 0-415783410. Epistles of the Brethren of Purity. On Arithmetic and Geometry. Arabic edition and English translation of Epistles 1 and Amp 2. Tamul al-Falsafia fi al-Tabia al-Insania min Kilal al-Nazari litadakul al-Akafi al-Dhat al-Mahaja 27, 85-100. Variations Ontologique Sorto du Concept d'Anguis chez Kierkegaard, in Kierkegaard Notre Contemporain Paradoxal, ed. Nicole Haytham, 83-95, editor of the Islam Division of the Encyclopedia of Sciences and Religions, eds. Unruhenhoff, Louise Oviedo et al., Philosophizing at the Margins of, she studies, Reflections on Ibn Sina's Ontology, in the Study of Shi-Islam. History, Theology and Law, eds. Fahad Daftri and Gerda Farad Miskin Zerda, pp. 585-597. Seeing Reality in Perspective, The Art of Optics, and the Science of Painting in the Art of Science. From Perspective Drawing to Quantum Randomness, eds. Rossella Lupacchini and Annarita Angelini, pp. 25-47. Tasdir Wali Hall al-Mabahith al-Mantiqiyya fi Phenomenologia Husserl al-Mahaja 29, 109-120. Le Renouvellement de la Falsafa. Les Cahiers de l'Islam 17-38. Recto verso, Redefining the Sketchbook, co-edited with Angela Bartram and Douglas Gittins. Asad Rustam, Mu'assis ilm al-Tariq Fa'al Alam al-Arabi, co-edited with Lamia Shahada, Suad Slim Marjara. On Dwelling, Heideggerian Allusions to Architectural Phenomenology, Studia UBB. Philosophia, Volume 60, Number 1.